Someone who knows you is watching what you have become, and they cannot reconcile what they are seeing with the version of you they stored in their memory. They have not said anything. They may never say anything. But in the private space of their own thoughts, in the quiet moments when they encounter evidence of your progress, a decision you made, a standard you held, a level you reached that they never anticipated, something in them stops completely. Not with jealousy first, but with genuine shock. The distance between who you were when they last truly saw you and who you are now has become impossible to ignore. In all of spiritual history, across every documented account of human transformation, the phenomenon of silent witnessing, where a soul's growth becomes so undeniable that even those who doubted it most are forced into wordless acknowledgement, has been recorded as one of the most powerful forces in the entire architecture of human development. What makes your situation extraordinary is not simply that someone is watching you in shock. It is that the growth producing that shock was never performed for an audience. You built it in private, in discipline, in the quiet consistency of someone who had decided to become something real rather than simply appear to be something impressive. Not long ago, you made a decision that required you to choose your own standard over the comfort of remaining where people expected you to stay. You stopped explaining your growth to people who were not growing alongside you. You stopped editing your progress to make it more digestible for people who were more comfortable with the older, more familiar version of you. That decision, to commit fully to becoming without seeking permission from anyone who preferred you unchanged, was the turning point that initiated everything visible happening in your life right now. The shock others are feeling is the direct result of that private, powerful commitment. Your growth has never moved through this world unwatched. From the very first moment, you began making choices that reflected a higher standard than your environment was expecting from you. Forces on both sides of the invisible boundary between seen and unseen reality took notice. Darkness watched with calculation, hoping that the absence of immediate visible reward would cause you to abandon the standard and return to behavior that was easier to predict and easier to limit. Divinity watched with something that can only be described as steady satisfaction, observing each quiet choice you made as confirmation that the soul it had invested in was becoming exactly what it was always designed to become. There was the period when you kept developing yourself in complete silence, with no audience and no guarantee that anything you were building would ever be recognized by anyone. There was the moment you chose discipline on the specific day, when giving up would have been entirely justified and no one would have blamed you for it. There was the time you held a standard in a situation where lowering it would have been easier, faster, and far less lonely. There was the season you invested in your own becoming when everything around you was suggesting that where you already were was sufficient. You disagreed quietly and kept building. When the assessment of your growth was conducted at the level where such things are genuinely evaluated, where the quality of a soul's development is measured not by external recognition, but by the integrity of the process that produced it, what the ancient beings responsible for that assessment recorded about you was unambiguous. They noted a soul that grew without performance, that developed without dependence on validation, that built something real in the absence of applause, and continued building even when the silence of being unrecognized became genuinely heavy. That quality of authentic, audience-independent development is what marks a soul as genuinely dangerous to every system built on keeping people small and approval-dependent. At the precise moment your growth crossed a threshold that made it spiritually undeniable, the moment when what you had built in private became too substantial to remain invisible, God witnessed it with complete and focused presence. Archangels assigned to observe the development of souls whose transformation carries significance beyond their individual lives were present for that crossing in its entirety. What they witnessed was not the arrival of sudden greatness, but the culmination of consistent, unglamorous, daily choices compounding into something that no honest observer, human or divine, could look at directly without being moved by the reality of what patient, integrity-driven growth actually produces. From that divine witnessing came a decree that addressed your growth directly and permanently. It declared that what you built in private would no longer remain private, not because you would be forced into visibility you did not choose, but because the frequency of genuine transformation cannot be indefinitely contained by the smallness of the environments that once held you. The decree activated a layer of divine amplification around everything you have been quietly developing, ensuring that the right people, the right opportunities, and the right recognition would begin finding their way to what you built without you needing to chase, perform, or compromise the standard that produced it. You are not a soul that stumbled into growth accidentally. You are an ancient soul that arrived in this life already carrying a blueprint for transformation so specific and so intentional that every period of quiet development you have moved through, every season of building without reward, every chapter of becoming without recognition was a precise stage in the execution of something that was designed long before you had any conscious awareness of it. The shock that silent observers are experiencing right now is not really shock at you. It is shock at the gap between what they assumed was possible for a soul like yours and what that soul actually chose to become. Your mission in this season is not to manage other people's shock or to perform your growth for those who are only now beginning to notice it. Your mission is to continue building with the same private integrity that produced everything they are currently struggling to reconcile with their earlier assumptions about you. The people watching you in silence need to see what a soul looks like when it develops not for reaction, but for purpose. When it holds its standard, not because anyone is watching, but because the standard itself has become the identity. You are assigned to demonstrate that the most powerful growth is always the kind that never needed an audience to sustain it. As the decree amplifies what you have been quietly building, the material dimensions of your life will begin reflecting the level you have actually reached rather than the level others assumed you would remain at. Opportunities that match the developed version of you, not the version people stored in their memory, will begin arriving with a fit and a naturalness that surprises everyone except you, because you know exactly what you did to become ready for them. Financial alignment, expanded influence, and relational connections that reflect your actual current frequency will surface in ways that confirm what you already knew privately, that the building was always worth it. The shock that silent observers are experiencing as they watch your growth will not stay silent indefinitely. Some of them will eventually speak, not always with the words they should have said earlier, but with changed behavior, with renewed respect, with the particular humility of someone who underestimated what they were watching and is now confronted with the undeniable evidence of their error. And some of them, moved by what your transformation has made them believe is possible, will begin making choices in their own lives that they had previously convinced themselves were beyond their reach. Your growth, simply by existing visibly, will become the permission someone else needed to begin theirs. Across the world right now, thousands of souls are in the same position you are in, having built something genuine and significant in private, now watching the world begin to register what they created without any help from external validation or audience approval. They built in different circumstances, in different languages, against different forms of resistance, but they share the same fundamental quality that your growth shares, the quality of something real, constructed through consistent integrity, that has now reached the point where its reality can no longer be contained by the smallness of the spaces that originally surrounded it. You are part of that generation of quiet builders. If something in these words has landed as confirmation of what you have been living through, privately, if your chest has responded to this as recognition of your own story rather than simply processing it as content. Then that recognition deserves a response that honors it. Comment 777 below so that the universe registers your awareness at this precise moment of your growth becoming visible. Share this with someone you know who has been building something real in silence and needs the reminder that what they are creating is being seen at levels far beyond what the silent observers around them have yet been able to express. Subscribe, because what continues to unfold as your growth moves from private to undeniable deserves continued clarity, support, and confirmation.